Hey everyone, John Lorden here. John, what are you doing? You can't have a JohnnyVlogs in the middle of the week. Actually, yeah, we can. There will be no itchy mysteries today. Instead, we are doing this special episode of JohnnyVlogs. I've been trying to line up this interview for a couple of weeks now. Finally, things have come together, and we have a great interview that I want to share with each and every one of you out there as soon as possible. And I hope you appreciate this interview because next week we're going to also talk to this person about filing missing persons reports, and he's going to give us some unique insight from the police perspective on that. But before we get started, I have to thank, let's start with the PayPal supporters this time. Quick shout out to Tina Schneider. Thank you so much for the support. Christy Groves, longtime friend of the channel. Thank you, Christy, for supporting via PayPal, as well as Rebecca Tyler, who loves all the shows, wants me to keep up the excellent work. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Outside of that, we've got many new Patreon supporters. Mary Hunt is now pledged. Brett Dunlap is pledged. Nicole has pledged. Ren has pledged. Elisa Gilvier, hope I'm saying that right. Jennifer Nguyen, or Nguyen, Nancy Graham, and Orange Everything, that's a cool name, has also pledged. Thank you so much for helping to keep me here doing what I love doing. So, just to give you a little backstory into this interview, several weeks ago, someone had made a comment about that I needed to learn more about things from the police perspective. And whenever I hear a comment like that, if there's something that rings true in me about that, it usually jars me in some way. And that comment did jar me a little bit because I know on this channel, we frequently talk about police operations, but we really talk about them usually from the family of the victim or the victim's point of view. And of course, that isn't always the best light. And I'm sure there are other concerns that we are not understanding or addressing in that. But one of my main frustrations has been that police don't feel very approachable, that a lot of the time it doesn't seem like they have very good public relations departments or media departments within the police department to share information with the public. And so I went looking and I said, there's got to be, like, why isn't there a YouTuber? You know, that's like a police officer that's sharing some of that perspective. And that is how I came across a really cool channel called Mike the Cop. So Mike is here with us today. I guess with all that said, let's just go ahead and jump over to the interview. Ladies and gentlemen at Lorden Arts, please welcome Mike the Cop. Hey, Mike.
Hey.
Thank you so much. Oh, he's got his drink. He's ready.
I got the last bit of coffee here. That's it.
There you go.
Yeah, cheers.
Virtual cheers.
See a shot, send a shot, or something like that.
So let's just, I really want to tell my audience a bit about what you do. I've already explained to them kind of how I found you, but typically on my channel, I run into a lot of information from the side of either the victims or the families of the victims. Uh-huh. And in particular with missing persons cases, there could be a lot of criticism about police and how they operate. And sure. At some point, I had someone that was kind of challenging me on that. And they were even saying, like, you know, John, you need to speak to more officers and, you know, maybe even do a ride along or something along those lines. And I went looking, and I was just looking for anything to kind of help bridge that gap, you know, to really give me a bit of a better understanding of the challenges that you guys face in terms of addressing these issues as well. And that's how I came across your channel, Mike the Cop. Which I just absolutely love. I love that there is a good mix there between, you have kind of serious toned videos, really good information, especially for people if they're like carrying weapons or like how to address police officers if you're interacting with them. But you also have a little fun on the channel, which is kind of a cool aspect to it as well.
I try.
So how long have you been a police officer?
It's whatever time it would be from July of 2009 is when I started the police academy. So 8.5 years, I guess, is roughly what that translates to.
Okay. And you are active right now. I think you're part-time right now?
Yeah. I went from full-time to part-time recently, but still active.
Okay. And on top of that, you're splitting your time between doing that work and, of course, doing YouTube work.
YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, running businesses. Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, I can tell you take on a lot, man. You've got your merchandise, you've got a lot. You're handling a lot of different pies, and we're going to talk about.
They say that entrepreneurship is the only job where you'll give up a 40-hour week to work 80.
No joke.
It makes no sense.
No joke. But luckily, it's doing something that you're passionate about, and honestly, something that I think is really important too. So, let me first off say congratulations on nailing 100,000 subscribers and just obliterating it. I think,
thanks.
Yeah, you're coming up on 130 or something now.
Sure.
Yeah.
I haven't looked in a couple of days, but yeah.
It's amazing. And your channel only started in February of 2016. So that growth is phenomenal. Just
Nice.
want to say congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a bit about what your focus is with the channel? I know I've kind of explained what I think of it, but what started it for you? What was the catalyst?
Well, I mean, YouTube is sort of like its own animal. For a long time, I treated YouTube like I would put videos on there and then I would try to link the YouTube video into Facebook or somewhere else. And it was like, I began to realize that YouTube has a stronger community about it than other platforms, like a really unique, committed community, like who follow YouTube. Like that's their platform, and they spend a lot of time watching those videos, commenting and interacting on the creators that they like. So I had to learn that for myself,
right.
And then begin to interact as a creator on that platform, and start to learn. Just for me, like I knew sort of like that I wanted to do videos where like law enforcement meets culture. And I want to educate people. I want to engage them, and I want to entertain them too. I want people to laugh. I feel like that sort of like can break down some barriers that may exist between people who are skeptical of law enforcement or fearful or hateful or whatever else. Sometimes that level of humor can give somebody a glimpse into the fact that's like, oh, this guy's just kind of like a normal person. Yeah. So, I mean, that's ultimately, I guess, the end game is just being able to do that, because it's obviously a top, any of those topics where, law enforcement is meeting culture is something that I'm going to be interested in, I'm passionate about, and I don't have to like struggle too hard to, want to get out of bed and make a video,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're hitting something kind of important there. Do you see that there is a challenge right now in that layer of communication between police and citizens, or at least in the media's point of view? It seems like there's a bit of a rough relationship going on there.
Yeah, I think it comes down so much to perception.
Yeah.
And that's where social media, mainstream media, whatever, either way, like there is a perception problem out there. I don't really see it on a day-to-day basis at work. For the most part, most cops are completely normal people with no agenda. And most citizens that we're serving are completely normal people with no plans to like break the law or rob a bank or kill somebody speeding.
Right.
And the reality is that most of them appreciate what we do, and we appreciate them not doing those things. So I mean, like on the day-to-day basis, there's smiles and handshakes and everything's fine. And I want people to see and understand that, if you watch the news, one situation gets put under a microscope and blown up and talked about and tweeted and retweeted and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden people feel like they understand the situation
right
via that media. And maybe they do, but a lot of times they don't. And a lot of times that skews our perception. And that's just that's not even a law enforcement, man. That's in any topic, right? Technology or, literature or entertainment. It's all these things where we form these opinions and ideas off of things that we have no direct experience with. We get fed this information, and unfortunately it doesn't always translate to thinking for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to agree, the media layer on that really does help skew that perception. I do a show where I try to cover cases that have been solved. Like, it's called Case Cracked. Mm-hmm. And I try to find the piece of information that's the critical thing that cracked that case. I just did an episode on BTK, and I was talking about the purple floppy disk that they traced back to his church. But it's really hard to research that show because you don't hear about those stories typically from the media in near the quantity that you do of, problems that have happened with police or even looking into missing persons cases like I do. It's just there's so much more of the negative tint to that information that when you do go looking for the good, it's not really easy to find in major media. And I think that's really where you're serving in a really good way in terms of YouTube and the social media space and helping to open that up a little bit and put a friendly face on this,
Yeah.
I wish that there was more Mike the Cops, like in the departments. I know some departments actually have like a media relations officer. Is that pretty normal?
It's becoming more and more common. You got like Miami Police Department. They have actually a full-time person that vlogs. Yeah. And their channel is really interesting to watch. They're doing a great job. So then there's this thing, and again, this isn't just a law enforcement thing. I think this is like an everywhere thing, even in business, where it's like people start to see a trend and they think, oh, we should do something about that, right? So like departments are like, we should probably have a social media person. And then they'd be like, hey, Bob, you're good on Facebook, right? Like, you want to be the social media person? Like, sure. Like, and Bob really just, like checks his friend statuses and that he's just on Facebook all the time. But it's like, doesn't mean that like Bob gets like how to communicate on social media or whatever else. So it's becoming more and more popular. I love getting like screenshots of like or shares from departments that are doing, funny things, keeping humor in the mix and stuff. So I think it's becoming more popular, and there are more like, cops that are finding themselves in a position to make videos or vlog, whether on or off duty and stuff like that. So hopefully that transition continues because a lot of departments are just archaic in their policies and approach to social media. That's for sure. Yeah. Well, and just the way that you phrased that, even being able to recognize that and talk about that in that way, I had like a big sigh of relief, 'cause it's like, I've been feeling like that. And it's great to hear that you are recognizing that. Some departments are really good with it. Other departments are a bit challenged with it. In the missing person space, I've seen great things happen with certain police departments. I know DC actually kind of freaked out the whole country when they started reporting on their missing persons, and all of a sudden everyone was like, hey, there's all these teens going missing in DC, and was like, well, just wait, they're getting better with their social media, and now we're hearing more about those cases, and that doesn't necessarily mean that this is a new trend. It's just that now the information's more accessible. And then there's the flip side of that too, which is I really like the tone that you hit. Basically, you and I almost put out the same video when the Vegas tragedy happened. And it was really just about slowing things down and trying to, not really appreciate, but really trying to recognize what was happening there without dusting off your soapbox, jumping up on a platform and pulling it to your preconceived notion of what the fix was. It was, just really well done work on that, man. Appreciate that. So you do a podcast as well. I know we talked about it a little bit at the start before we started recording here. Is that just for Patreon supporters? Is that for everyone? The full video we've done for Patreon. I think we have done a live stream, and in the last month, we've done a live stream version of the podcast that was on YouTube, and we released also the full version of one because the topic I felt was so important. We were talking about law enforcement dealing with people with disabilities. Yes. I felt like it just was something really good to give to as many people as possible. Our Patreon is usually like the full video. We'll do like outtakes, funny different outtakes or something from the show, and we'll do that with Patreon or early releases and all that. But the full audio is on iTunes or SoundCloud, as like any other podcast. Yeah, and that's a weekly podcast that you're doing? So far, yeah. Okay. So far. Hopefully we can keep that pace. I'd love to do it every day if I could, but yeah. It's a good time. Another aspect of business that you've got to keep balanced with everything else that's going on. If I could just do one thing, that's all I would do. I know that the YouTube community isn't necessarily like a podcast community, so it's like Joe Rogan pulls it off with 3 hours every day live stream, and he's super successful with that. But he also gets to bring in intriguing guests every day in Hollywood. It's just it's a different ball game. But I just love that format. I love this kind of format, like where I'm engaging with someone and having a conversation, and you can hit these topics and all that stuff. I really enjoy that. So.
Yeah, me too. I've been going more this direction. It's kind of the bigger my channel gets, the easier it is to get interviews, even with family members of missing persons, which can be very, very tough conversations, but they're really rewarding in a certain way also, just being able to pass along any little piece of advice or hope that you can give to those type of people. So I'm liking this format as well. A lot of people have bugged me for a long time about doing a podcast. I really haven't figured out the right one that has driven me to feel like you feel about it.
Right. Yeah.
Like I would definitely do that, every week or something like that. So now I did find a reference to you in an article that was about a different police officer that got in a little bit of trouble for doing Vine videos, I believe.
Angry cops.
Yeah. Have you bumped into any challenges with having the social media presence in terms of your police work?
I personally haven't.
Okay.
But I started with an organization called Humanizing the Badge. So we were on Facebook. Like I was doing social media stuff for that organization as a nonprofit. And that's sort of like the heart of what got me started. And we saw another guy, Officer Daniels, doing Vine videos, and we were laughing at the station, and my kids are watching them, and I'm like, and something clicked in me about the importance of video. So then that's where I was like, I'll try to make some videos, like video shorts on Vine or Instagram or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just went right to my police administration. And I looked at our social media policy, and I thought, okay, I think I can do this. Like I'd have to blur out you can't show the patch, can't show the badge.
Right.
I didn't have a fake police uniform like I do now in my videos. Like I have a badge that says, Mike the Cop on it or whatever. Like, so that's easy now. I don't have to blur anything out. But at the time it was like, I did that. And then one of my sergeants was like, hey, just make sure if you're doing any videos while you're here at work, it's gotta be on your lunch break. It can't be like, whatever. So I kind of like got all the ground rules. I got permission ahead of time. I told them the purpose of the videos, and they gave me like this tentative thumbs up, like, all right, whatever. And then eventually the director of public safety was passing me in the hallway one day. This was after like several months had gone by, and it was like, hey, I saw one of your videos the other night. And I was just like, oh, here it is, like the hammer's dropping. It's all over. And he's like, he tells the story about how his kids were laughing in the other room, and he walked in there, and he's like, what are you laughing at? They're like, look at this Mike the Cop guy or whatever. And he's like, hey, he works for me. And he just told me, he's like, a light bulb clicked for him then too, which was like, I would always go, like, we didn't have school resource officers in our department, but I would try every day if I could to go to a school in our community. And that sort of like kept me thinking in terms of like what kind of things are trending or, content and just interacting with that kind of like next generation. But that light bulb clicked for him and was like, if my kids who never interact with me about anything with law enforcement are laughing at you, you're doing something right. So keep it up. So like once that happened, then it was sort of like not free reign per se, but I definitely didn't worry anymore. Like, is this going to stop? Is this going to go? And then like, kind of like once I felt like it took hold, then it was like, all right, I'm going to do this no matter what, you know? So.
Awesome. It's good to hear that they recognize the value in it, and they're basically giving you a clear road to go ahead.
Some other departments though, like somebody sent me, I don't know if it was a Snapchat or something or a message on Instagram, but they said they were laughing because their public information officer, their media person at their department, used me as an example of what not to do. Like, don't be like this guy. Even though he's funny, don't be like this. This is going to put us at too much risk, whatever. Because I kind of like say whatever I want. I like it, there's really nobody there to stop me.
Yeah.
I just go find it. If I got fired, I just go find a different part-time department. I don't care. I'll just keep making videos,
So have you ever been recognized in terms of when you're making a call?
Yeah, I have. Not a crazy amount of times, but yeah, it's definitely happened. Like at a house, like, aren't you on YouTube? Or whatever. So it's happened. And I like one person, I actually like, there's a car full of like 20 somethings. This was the very first time I ever got recognized at work. I made a traffic stop. So I could tell you that in that particular stretch of road, I would never stop anybody for doing any less than 12 over. Mm-hmm. So however fast they were going, it was at least 12 miles an hour over the speed limit.
Okay.
So I pulled them over. I look at all the information, and instead of writing him the full amount, it was like a 5 over ticket, like a 1 to 5 over. So in Michigan, like that would give him a break of a couple of the points and $100 and, whatever else. So I wrote the ticket was already written, and, it's not like, the good old days. We just tear the ticket up. Like it's submitted. It's in the system. Like I can't just make it go away. Yeah. So, not that I would just because somebody recognized me, but like they're like some kid in the back seat's like, aren't you on Vine? And I'm like, yeah, well, here's your ticket. Sorry. Like, yeah.
Awesome. So we mentioned a little bit, you mentioned Humanize. Is it Humanize the Badge or Humanizing the Badge?
Humanizing. Yeah.
Humanizing the Badge. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So we started back in like late 2014. Mm-hmm. After Ferguson, which I felt was like in the 90s, it was Rodney King. It was like a watershed moment for law enforcement and perception. Ferguson, I don't know. Hopefully we never even see that sort of like big blow up again in our lifetime. But like that was like a real key thing where it was like a big dividing line.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, completely unjustified and unnecessary, but it is what it is. Like, mm-hmm. I mean, you can't deny that. So, I remember watching that and thinking, gosh, we have to do something to communicate that cops are people, right. I felt like we were so, as a profession, objectified, mm-hmm. Treated as robots in that, like everyone had the solution for exactly how that situation should have been handled. Again, like we talked about earlier, and I'm just like, no, like, yeah. And I looked and I'm like, no one out there in the law enforcement community is really educating people in a way that they would relate to. So that was sort of like the start of that. And then I got together with someone named Elizabeth Shiftwell. That's her author name. She wrote an article called Dear Officer, I See You. And we connected and we started working on Humanizing the Badge there on out. And we didn't know what it was going to be. We just know that we wanted to be on social media doing something positive. So when it started, we were like, well, maybe if we ever raise any money, we can give it to families of officers that have like kids with like disabilities or something. Maybe we'll help offset costs. We didn't know. But then all of a sudden we started getting messages and emails for, hey, I was involved in this high risk situation at work. I don't know how to deal with it. I'm really stressed out. We would get a message from a spouse of a police officer that would say, hey, I don't know what happened at work, but my husband hasn't barely said a word in 3 weeks. I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah.
So we're like, dang, man. Like, so that need sort of arose. So at this point, that's developed into a full blown like mental health team that people can reach out anytime. It's led by a social worker and police chaplain with, a bunch of letters after his name and all that stuff. So we can work with people from as simple as just, hey, have a conversation, mm-hmm. to refer them to a professional in their area, confidentially and all that stuff. So that's a huge part of what we're doing. Suicide prevention. It's a huge, huge problem in law enforcement. So we're working on that. And then we do these things called Project Humans, where we go to different cities and we work with a police department or police departments and local nonprofits. Mm-hmm. We try to bring them together to do activities in the community, sort of like set the example. We raise funds for that. We give the money to on the ground locally, mm-hmm. and hopefully just kind of like inspire those people to continue to do that sort of thing, long after we're gone.
Excellent. That's just a really great cause. And kind of goes in line with everything else you're doing. It seems like your YouTube work is almost a bit of an offshoot of that same mentality of just really trying to remind us. I think you nailed it when you said robots. I can tell you, I've felt like that in certain cases. Like, they're not understanding for some reason. Why aren't they looking at how to fix these things or do things differently? And it is frustrating from this side of it, but we really don't get a lot of insight where we have officers willing to speak this openly about these types of situations to help us understand. Which is why I think the work you're doing is so important. And on behalf of myself and my Patreon and PayPal supporters, we are going to make a donation to Humanizing the Badge as soon as we're done with this interview today as well.
Oh, geez.
Just
thank you.
With that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's great work that you guys are doing. It's great to recognize that need. I like how you organically found that need and then stepped up to it. And you're taking care of people on a national level. Is it anyone across the nation that can call in and request help?
Absolutely. Yep. We get our emails monitored, and our Facebook page we have people in all time zones. So, hopefully, even in fairly emergent situations, we can get to people as quickly as we can.
Awesome. All right. Well, before we finish up this interview, I just want to ask, first of all, when someone did suggest to me that I get a ride along, do those happen anymore? Is that a real thing?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some departments have policies that prevent it.
Okay.
But I think it's still pretty common. Usually like there's a waiver and you just go sign up and I mean, it's usually, depends on the department. Some places are really, really slow and some places are really, really busy. So it's kind of like, it just depends. But, I just did a ride along with someone the other night that came out. I worked a midnight shift and they came out from like midnight to 4.
Oh.
And, I mean, it happens for sure.
Awesome. Well, if I ever get out to Michigan, do you think I could sign up for a ride along with Mike the Cop?
100%.
Excellent. I would love to do that sometime. Mike, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate having you here.
I'm super, super humbled that you would consider talking to me. So thank you.
No, man, what you're doing it's really good work. It's really, really needed. And I'm just so thankful that someone saw that gap and is stepping up to fill that in. And I just wish you all the success in the world. I hope your channel keeps exploding.
Yours too.
All right. Take care. And to everyone that joined me on this edition of JohnnyVlogs, thank you so much for hanging out with Mike the Cop. Check back next week where he will come back to a special episode of Searchlight, and we're going to talk about filing missing persons reports. Maybe he can give us some tips that can help us with the challenges around that, or at least help us understand things a bit better. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you on the next show on the Lord and Arts channel.